The exhibit area, please.
One, two, test 1, 2, 3.
This is only practice.
Something. Again. Again. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Test 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds better than I do. Testing 1, 2. Test. Sorry, Dean.
Thousands of dollars of equipment are being tuned up here for your listening pleasure tonight, folks.
Thank you.
Think of all of these things they brought with them. 2 truckloads of stuff here. So get up front or get in here, get sat down. Get ready. All right, if you're not in your seat by the time the thing begins, people can move up into it. Let's make this clear. Dancing will be allowed if you're old enough to do it. And when I see back there that our recording people or photographers, whatever, are ready to go, no more noise from the back, please. Now's the time. If you're one of those Art Bell aficionados, and if you listen to their programs, you have probably heard Neil Slade. He's been on there several times, and as a consequence has peddled many thousands of books. So he's now a very wealthy Neil Slade. All of this equipment is paid for, see? But I kid you not, you know that. Anyway, we're fortunate that Neil is with us tonight, brought his buddy with him, and a lot of different equipment. If you have listened, you know that he's written 4 books on the use of the other 90% of your brain, of which I can think of 2 or 3 examples in the audience here that I would highly recommend that they read a few of those books. One's called Frontal Lobe Supercharged, easy enough for you to say, and Brain Magic, and I don't know what the other 2 are, but he's written enough books to sell thousands of them, and we're happy to have him here tonight. So he's got a free head of steam to tell you what he wants to tell you, play any instrument he wants to play. Him and his buddy can play whatever they want to play, and if you want him to stay a little longer, we'll just see how that works out. So give him a big round of applause. Neil and his buddy.
I hear funny noise. We're going to keep this very informal. My friend Eric and I get together once or twice a week and play music in the living room. So we're going to pretend that we're doing exactly that. Just a couple of brief words so you know where we're coming from. I studied with brain researcher T.D. Lingo, who I know some of you already know of, for 11 years. and he ran the Dormant Brain Research and Development Laboratory in Black Hawk, Colorado for 35 years. And his area of study was brain and behavior. What he discovered through his own research and studying all the research of scientists all over the world was the importance of a part of the human brain called the amygdala. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the amygdala. There must be Art Bell listeners, I'm sure. The amygdala is a key gateway switch in the brain. And what it does, its function, is to allow electrochemical activity to move from the more primitive parts of our brain to the more advanced parts of our brain. And we're going to play a lot of music and hopefully just get your amygdala clicking forward. And then I will explain to you how you can do it yourself when I'm not around and how the brain works. And so we're going to start off. I'm going to introduce a friend of mine, Eric Allen Vincent, who you will soon be hearing on the Art Bell show with his bumper music to my interviews. And he composed a song on T.D. Lingo's actual banjo called Click Your Amygdala. And he's going to play that for us now. Eric Allen Vincent.
Hi. It's a song about positive brain function. If you want logical, permanent change in perception, click your amygdala forward. If you want logical intelligence available, the trick is to click, click, click your amygdala forward. Click, click, click that happy switch from the back to the frontal lobe. Click, click, click your amygdala forward. If you want logical, permanent change in perception, click your amygdala forward. Click, click, click that happy switch. Yeah. From the back to the frontal lobes. Click, click, click your amygdala forward, forward. Click, click, click that happy switch. From the back down to the frontal lobes. Click, click, your amygdala forward.
amps on standby for a little while. Now let's talk about the brain. The main thing that occurs to me, well, let me tell you a little bit about my background, first of all. I graduated and attended 3 universities many, many years ago in music education, and then went on to teach music lessons. And I figured, in the past 25 years, I've taught probably about 25,000 private music lessons to adults and kids from ages 6 all the way up to probably 75. And I've learned lots of things about learning and human behavior and how our minds work from teaching. I also studied, as I mentioned earlier, with a brain researcher, T.D. Lingo, starting in about 1980 and ending in 1993 with his own death at the lab from natural causes. The one main thing that has occurred to me is that the brain is the one thing that we have in common. You can replace every single thing that you have in this world or do without it except your brain. Think about it. You can get by with an artificial heart. You can even get a blood transfusion and you're still you. You can get an artificial limb. You can get a new car. You can change your diet and you're pretty much still you. But the one thing you can't change is your brain. And your brain has to be working well. If your brain is damaged, then everything changes. And so it is also that if you don't use all of your brain, life is very different from if you live up to your brain's potential. Now we know scientists have looked at the brain under a microscope and counted up all the connections in the brain. And it turns out that they have yet to find anything more complex than the human brain. Inside every 3-pound brain that we have inside our cranium are as many neural connections as there literally are grains of sand on the entire planet, on every beach. Another illustration for the amount of possible neural connections in the brain is to take a piece of paper. And let's say this represents one connection in your brain. Now I'm going to place this on the floor. That's one connection in your brain. Okay? Now in the very outside 1/6 of an inch layer, you have about 200 billion neurons. Those are brain cells. And underneath that, you have another 2 inches of glial cells, numbering 200 to 400 billion. And each one of those neural cells has 50 to 100,000 connections with other nerve cells in the brain. If you add up all those connections, it's far, 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 far more complex than any computer we've even conceived of. You could build a computer that would be the size of the state of Texas and a mile high, and it would be maybe as powerful as one human brain, as your human brain. If that's one neural connection in your brain, you would stack up pieces of paper, each one representing a connection in your brain, and it would go to the moon. That's how many connections you have in your brain. Pretty powerful computer there. Of course, that stack of paper would go past the moon and would go all the way to the planet Mars. Imagine that. That's how many connections you have in your brain. And once it got to the planet Mars, it would keep going past Jupiter, past Saturn, Neptune. It would go all the way to Pluto. Imagine that many connections in your brain. That's a big number. And in fact, it would go further than that. It would go as far as the visible universe that we know of, the farthest star that we know of. Carl Sagan, a fairly well-respected scientist, has said that you have more possible connections in your brain than there are literally protons and neutrons in the universe. Imagine that, each and every one of you inside your head right now. Now, the question, of course, comes up, well, if I've got this amazing device I'm walking around with 24 hours a day, the most complex machine that we can think of, the most complex thing, how come I can't find my car keys? It's the great cosmic joke. The joke being is that we only use 1% of our brain's potential. And in fact, Nobel laureate John Lorber said at the University of Colorado in 1969, 1% is far too generous an estimate because the brain's capacity to learn and hold information is in fact infinite. And any percentage of infinity is still an infinitely small percentage. So the trick becomes how to turn on more of the brain, or how to develop the potential that we have in each brain. And this was the work that my friend, brain researcher T.D. Lingo did for 35 years. He started out as a scout for Patton's army back in World War II. And he saw the horrors of war. He was at the gates of Auschwitz. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. And when the war was over, he also went to 3 universities. And when he was working on his PhD at the University of Chicago, he asked his neurology professor, "Why must I go to war and kill my brother?" And the professor pointed to his own gray head and said, "Well, we haven't worked that out yet here at university. But I think if there's an answer to that question, it's here. It's in the human brain." And he said to Lingo, he says, "You know, you could stay in the university and you could work on it here, but you would go slow because of all the bureaucracy and all the red tape and all that." He says, "If you want to go fast, you're going to have to start your own research lab." So Lingo said, "Okay, that's what I'm going to do." So he dropped out at the tail end of his PhD program, and he thought about, okay, I want to start my own brain research lab, but I don't have any money. How am I going to do it? So he knew that he could tell a good story. He also knew 3 chords on the guitar. So I don't know if any of you remember this, but T.D. Lingo first appeared on the Groucho Marx You Bet Your Life show in 1956 with a coonskin cap and a leather vest, and was singing folk songs and entertained Groucho Marx, and he won a couple $1,000s on that show. Then that was in Hollywood. Then during that show, a couple moguls in New York City saw this guy on TV, and he says, "You know, this producer's sitting back in his lazy chair at home watching the Groucho Marx show," and he says, "I know a good phony when I see one, and that guy is great." So he called all the way to the wilds of Lookout Mountain in Denver, Colorado, and got T.D. Lingo on the phone. They took him out to New York, and they put him on national TV, and he did a summer replacement show singing folk songs, just when folk songs were becoming a big fad. This was in 1956. And Lingo did that, and he had people like Burl Ives and Woody Guthrie on the show, and Pete Seeger, and they sang folk songs. Well, on the very last show, at the end of the summer, when Lingo's time was up, he looked into the camera and he said, "If anyone out there has a mountain to sell, call me." And someone from Colorado near Black Hawk called him up and says, "Yeah, I got 300 acres. You want to buy it?" And Lingo said yes. So Lingo split New York. He had 2 grocery sacks full of money. One he gave to the IRS, and the other one he bought Laughing Coyote Mountain, and that's where he began his brain research lab. And he cut down the timber there, and he built log cabin structures. And over the course of the next 35 years, he had all kinds of people come up. thousands of people came from all over the world to study how the human brain worked. And they all worked together, and they tried out, back in the 60s, TM was just coming into vogue, and they tried yoga and meditation. And of course, back then, people were trying psychedelic drugs, and they tried all different kinds of therapies. And over the course of the 35-year period, by the beginning of the 80s, or actually really by mid-70s, early 70s, Lingo had pretty much figured out what worked and what didn't work. And it came down to knowing brain basics. People would come up with all kinds of problems. They suffered from depression. They suffered from anxiety. They didn't know what to do with their lives. They had marital problems. They had all kinds of dysfunctions. Or people who just wanted to make their life work better. And what they found was that when they learned how the human brain works, and when they specifically learned how to control a part of the brain called the amygdala, marvelous things started happening. And Lingo did standardized testing just to make sure this wasn't subjective gobbledygook or, hey, I feel a lot smarter now. They did testing. They did Stanford Binet IQ. When people learned how to activate the frontal lobes portion of their brain and identify such through stimulation of the amygdala organ in the brain, and I'll explain to you how to do that with this handy feather, of course. IQ went up 40 to 80 points on the Stanford Binet IQ test, and it went up 500 to 1,400 percentage points on the Getzels-Jackson Creativity Index. In other words, creative ways of thinking and solving problems. Subjectively, people reported amazing things happen to them. This is what first got me interested. I was watching Channel 12 one evening, and that's the local, one of the local public television stations here. And I was half falling asleep, and I saw these people in the woods near these log cabins, and they were talking about their experience. And this one woman said, I could see into the blood veins in my arms, and I could almost see with microscopic vision, and I could see how the cells were moving. And another person would be reporting telepathic experiences with other people up at the lab. They were reporting wonderful feelings of contentment and pleasure and euphoria. Reports of, there's lots of words for a peak experience. They said once they learned how to click into their frontal lobes, they felt this kensho, moksha, born again, peak experience, I see God face to face, transcendence, the historical transcendence phenomenon that goes by 100 different names. And it didn't take them 20 years of meditation to do it. All it took was focusing on this one area of the brain, because that's where it's happening. So I ended up writing Lingo a letter, and he invited me up, and I went up there on a Saturday. And to get to the lab, you'd have to drive 40 miles west of Denver, and then you'd have to drive another 5 miles straight up this dirt road, and then park your car. And then there was this little dirt trail that went way back in the woods. And you'd hike straight up this path, and you'd have to rest every 100 steps that you took. And I got there, and Lingo comes down, and he's in his grubby blue jeans and so on, and there were some other people from the lab up there who was studying at the time. And the first thing he did was he yelled at me. He was mad because I came up on the wrong day. And I said, sorry, and he eventually said, okay, well, as long as you're here, you might as well stay. And we began talking. That began an 11-year work relationship with him, finally in which I became one of his primary assistants, and began teaching people how to do this brain self-stimulation. So I'm going to teach you all right here the very basic brain, the brain basics. So you'll start to know how your brain works and how you can start doing brain self-control and start eliminating whatever problem it is that you have, and how to activate directly the pleasure responses in your brain. Oh, by the way, before I forget, and it was mentioned that I was on Art Bell, if you do have an AM radio, Art is broadcasting an interview with me this Sunday evening, and that's 6:30 a.m. KHOW here in Denver. I believe I come on at midnight. And the topic of that is whole brain sex, which is a topic many people are interested in. It's a pretty wild show, but it really talks about how one directly accesses the pleasure circuits in the brain and how typical activities that we do through the day can be radically changed once you learn how to click this amygdala. Pleasurable activities, such as SEX, are multiplied to unbelievable heights. I have a free, make sure you get one of these free handouts, and I've got them back there at the table. And that's the topic of that show on Sunday. Art's been great. I have to say thank you to Art. He's had me on his show 5 times since May 18th. So, and the books have proven very popular. Quick commercial. The books go into the detail that I don't have the time to go into here. I will tell you where your amygdala is and basically how to click it. If it sounds interesting to you, I make the books very inexpensive. They're either $10.95 or $12.95, and there's 25 years of my work and love and labor in these. Anyway, a good way to explain how the brain is put together is to make an analogy, like with an apple, okay? Better idea. I'm going to show you right where the switch is to start out with, okay? Everyone take their hand and grab on to your forehead like this with one hand, okay? Now, everything underneath your hand is your frontal lobes. That's the most advanced part of your brain. You can put your hands down now. If you look at animals like dogs and cats and lower mammals, even higher apes like chimpanzees and gorillas, their head slopes back from the eyebrows because they have very small frontal lobes. Reptiles have no frontal lobes. Your snake has no frontal lobes. Your dog or your cat has a little bit of cortex in the front. But us humans, our forehead goes straight up. We've got this big, massive area here. Now, neurosurgeon Alexandra Luria proved many, many decades ago that the frontal lobes are mostly dormant. A trickle of activity happens in the frontal lobes. We think we're smart humans, but in fact, we're using a very, very small part of that frontal lobes. Alexandra Luria discovered when he severed the frontal lobes from the rest of the brain, a little bit of behavior changed, and that was it. We know from recent examination of patients with a terrible disease called hydroencephalitis. This is where spinal fluid eats out the brain from the inside, and only 1/6 of an inch layer is left of the brain. You could literally shine a flashlight through somebody's head with this disease. And yet, IQ remains constant. One fellow with half of his brain surgically removed became a doctor. I saw a woman on television with half of her brain taken out, including all of one side of the frontal lobes. She was on her way to medical school. So we think we're smart. We think we're using a lot of our brain, but we're not. We're only using a small percentage. So most of this is dormant. It's not being used. Okay, now, to use the frontal lobes, you've got to turn them on. And just like there's a light switch on the wall that turns on the ceiling light, there's a switch. There's actually several, but the main switch in the brain that we're going to talk about is the amygdala. I'm going to show you how to find your amygdala. First, you got to know where it is before you turn it on. Everyone, hold up your thumbs. Put them in your ears, not so tight that you can't hear me. Can you all still hear me? Okay. Extend your fingers upwards like this. Okay. Now, move them like this and face the person next to you. Okay, you have just clicked your amygdala forward. Of course, you don't understand why. Okay, I'm going to show you where the amygdala is. Put your thumbs back in. Take your middle nasty gesture finger and put it in the corner of your eye, the back corner of your eye. Got it? Now, drape your index finger on your skull and drag your finger down so it's right in between your thumb and your middle finger, so it's right in between the eyes and the ears, and point. Got it? 1 inch inside the right temple is your right amygdala, and 1 inch inside your left temple is your left amygdala. You actually have 2. You can put your fingers down now. You have an amygdala for the right hemisphere of your brain and an amygdala for the left hemisphere of your brain. Because your brain, if you look at it, has got a big crease down the middle. It's actually divided in 2. The right amygdala is for the right hemisphere. The left amygdala is for the left hemisphere. We say amygdala because it's easier than amygdalae or amygdalae. Okay? It's also easier to spell. You do use smell to get to your amygdala as well, but you'll have to read the book to figure that one out. Anyway, it's easier to spell amygdala with an A, and it's catchy. Okay. Anyway, the amygdala now sits in between, it sits in back of the frontal lobes, and right in front and on top of the reptile brain. Dr. Paul MacLean of the Laboratory of Brain Evolution and Behavior, formerly with NIMH, developed the way of looking at the brain he called the triune brain. He discovered that the human brain is really 3 brains in one. This is very important. It's a reptile brain core surrounded by a mammal brain, further surrounded by this big cortex, primate brain. Okay? Now back way, way, way long ago when there were just reptiles and fish swimming around, there was this very simple brain, which we now call the reptile brain. And what it did was compute basic survival, counterattack, and self-defense. If you're a lizard, that's all you need. Okay? Here's the famous neuroscientist joke, which many of you, I'm sure, have heard. The reptile brain computes the 4 F's of behavior: feeding, fighting, fleeing, and reproduction. Okay? That's what the reptile brain does. It does it in reptiles, and the reptile brain in you does the same thing. Whenever you click into fight or flight response, if someone were to come up with you with a baseball bat ready, you would automatically fully click into that reptile brain. It would take over, and it would react and help you to survive. That's your reptile brain. It's like the seeds of an apple. It makes up a very small portion inside the brain at the top of your spinal cord. Got it? Anyone not understand the reptile brain? Raise your hand. Okay. Around the reptile brain, now later in evolutionary history, if you believe that, came along the mammals, and the brain changed. And animals like dogs or cats grew more on top of the reptile brain. There's another layer of brain. And what the mammal brain, it's sort of like the core around the seeds of an apple. You know, you have the tiny hard seeds, right, for the basic survival stuff. And then you've got the softer core around a little bigger. You've got the same thing in your brain, and it's called the mammal brain. And dogs and cats have this too, and other mammals. It adds on basic social behaviors and emotions. Now, lizards have no emotion. They're we say cold-blooded because when someone's cold-blooded, they have no emotion. Like reptiles have no emotion. They lay their eggs and they split. Kids, you're on your own. Mammals nurture their young. They care about one another. Wolves hunt in packs, so there's very basic get-together skills, social skills. Plus the emotions. Your dog and your cat can be happy. You've seen your dog smile and wag its tail when you come home. So that's where the emotions are in your brain. If you feel horrible, if you're depressed, if you're angry, if you're sad, that's in your mammal brain. if you're feeling euphoric, if you're excited, if you're happy, that's in your mammal brain, okay? Now, a mammal brain flicks back and forth between negative and positive emotions uncontrollably. It's at the whim of the environment. If the dog finds a bone, it's happy, okay? If it sees a bigger dog, it's scared. The mammal brain just flicks back and forth between pleasure and pain without any emotion. And so do you without your frontal lobes. Now, later on came bigger-brained animals like humans and apes. And humans especially, and we also see this kind of brain, by the way, in dolphins and whales. They also share very big frontal lobes. They're alien. They speak a different language than us. But in any case, we developed, beyond dogs and cats, further refinement of the mammal brain, greater range of emotion, and the ability to talk, to build chairs, to have meetings, police departments, fire departments. These are all developments of the mammal brain. And we also have these big frontal lobes. The frontal lobes are responsible for CICIL, C-I-C-I-L. C-I-C-I-L. Everyone say CICIL. CICIL. Good. C stands for creativity. I stands for imagination. C stands for cooperation. I stands for intuition. L stands for logic. These are all very advanced abilities that occur in the frontal lobes. And like I said, we get a trickle of that. We use our frontal lobes enough to plan lunch. We use our frontal lobes enough to plan a yearly trip to Disneyland. But beyond that, only a trickle is getting through. Now, as I mentioned before, what Lingo found and what I have found from literally thousands and thousands of people who learn how to click their amygdala forward, and once they do it, I get letters and email that it doesn't stop. They say, oh my God, I clicked my amygdala forward and I turned on my frontal lobes, and this is amazing. I have letters. Come back and read the letters in the back. Okay? Now, clicking the amygdala, it's just like a light switch. It's very simple. It's not hard at all. I'm going to teach you. Some people have very dramatic results when they first click their... There must be people here who have been clicking. Raise your hand if you're a clicker here in this group. Do we have any clickers? I know we do. We have a couple. I can't see with the lights. Well, one or two. All right. Some people see colors. Their body starts vibrating. They feel waves of euphoria. Most of us, me included, start out very gradually. You feel very subtle response. You may feel sudden calmness. You may feel very subtle waves of pleasure. You'll feel it in different parts of your body, of course, because your brain's connected all over your body. Some people see lights when they close their eyes. Some people hear voices. We'll try. You're going to be distracted here tonight. What I would suggest is when you get home or to your hotel room tonight, try it when it's very quiet and the lights are off, and listen very carefully, and you may start to pick up some things. But it's like learning how to play the piano. The first day you learn to play the piano, you get twinkle, twinkle, dee, 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 right? If you want to learn how to play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, you're going to have to work at it for a little while. And so it is with clicking your amygdala and getting the frontal lobes activated. As you click daily while you're waiting in line at the supermarket, while you're driving in the traffic jam, you'll be in a traffic jam and you'll be clicked backwards into your reptile self-defense counterattack. Oh, that's right, confirm. What you will do at that instant is you will click your amygdala forward, and all of a sudden all that rage and anger will disappear, and the electrochemical activities will surge into the creative frontal lobes, and you'll go, hey, it's not so bad. Let's listen to Mozart on the radio. boy, I'm glad I've got some time to relax here. And suddenly you've transformed this horrible waiting in line in traffic into this pleasurable event. And you will gain control. And it's accumulative. The first time you click your amygdala forward, you might just go like this. Okay? After you've been clicking for about a month, it will be like this. Oh my God! Okay? You will physically change the neurocircuitry in your brain. If they could go into your brain and examine it with a microscope, and they know from looking at rats' brains and some other animals' brains, that the actual physical connections in the brain change when you start changing the circuitry and the behavior and thought processes. So you're going to be growing new branches into your frontal lobes. And instead of just planning lunch, you're going to be planning what you're going to do with this month-long vacation that you just earned. You're going to be planning your honeymoon. You're going to be planning all these wonderful things that are happening to you. One of the most amazing things is people report paranormal abilities spontaneously begin to happen. Telekinesis is the most rare, but telepathy, precognition, clairvoyance, clairaudience. I get reports of all these things happening from people spontaneously. You don't even have to try to make it happen. Once you start clicking the amygdala forward, getting out of the reptile brain and clicking forward, it just starts happening and it accumulates over time. And if you just do this simple clicking and understand without forgetting tomorrow how your brain is put together, if you keep growing into your frontal lobe circuit, your life will be amazing. 24 hours a day. Okay? Here's the simplest way we have found. And by the way, Ken Bryn has made some nice amygdala clickers back there. We have found that the easiest way to click the amygdala forward is with a imagery we call feather tickling. The amygdala is about the size of the tip of your thumb, and the word amygdala comes from the Greek word meaning almond, because if you go into the brain and look like it, it looks like a little nut, a little walnut protuberance inside the brain. And scientists know that if you stimulate the back part of the amygdala facing the reptile brain, you automatically go into rage, panic attacks. You feel like a car's just missed hitting you. If you stimulate the front part of the amygdala, the anterior part, the energy then goes forward into the frontal lobes, and you get feedback of euphoria and pleasure. So what we want to do is click the amygdala forward into the frontal lobes. And the easiest way to do that is with a feather. It's very easy. Clicking your amygdala forward is easy. It takes less energy than a gnat scratching its butt. Okay? We're talking about I hear from people and they say, "Oh, I was getting a headache clicking my amygdala forward and I grip my teeth and nothing's happening." No, it's easy. That's why we use a feather. We're talking about changing a thought process. Very simple. In fact, it may be so simple you may think nothing's happening. Not true. Okay? I'm going to guide you through your first amygdala clicking. Okay? And then I'm going to let you just sit with it for about 15 seconds and just note what happens, and then try it again tonight. Then keep it up. Just keep doing it. Okay? Especially when things look bad, click your amygdala forward. Okay? Everyone close your eyes, get relaxed. Get relaxed, close your eyes. Imagine you have a feather. And you hold it in your right hand. And you go into your brain and you locate the right amygdala, which is 1 inch inside the right temple. You don't even have to move your hand. You just imagine it in your mind. And tickle the front part of your right amygdala. And as you tickle it, you can feel the energy move from the back of the brain forward, and it fills the frontal lobes. And then go to the left side and tickle the left amygdala. Tickle, tickle, tickle. And that sends the energy forward. Right side, tickle, tickle, tickle. We have someone laughing here. I think it's working on her. And tickle your left amygdala. Just notice what your brain feels like after a little tickling. Don't tickle the back, just the front. Okay, that's it. You can open your eyes now. All you're doing is sending energy from the most primitive part of your brain to the most advanced part. It's like turning the key on the ignition of your car. You won't go anywhere until you turn the key and get the electricity going up into the cylinders. Okay? So that'll give you a little taste of what it takes to get into the advanced part of your brain. Just the mere fact that you were imagining and using abstract thought, something that no ape could do, something that no dog or cat could do, something that no lizard could do, that alone, the imaginative process, started the energy, electrochemical processes flowing into your brain, into your frontal lobes. And if we had a PET scan machine here taking a picture of your brain, it would show the energy going forward. And that's what you've got to develop over time. You don't have to be clicked into counterattack, rage, anger. You can self-control your brain at any moment and get into your frontal lobes and experience pleasure, creativity, and intelligence. And life will change drastically. Okay? You want to do this one more time? Okay, put your thumbs in your ears. We have a request. Wiggle at your neighbor. Take your third finger, put it in the back corner of your eyes, drape your index finger on your skull, and then move it so it's right in between the other two fingers and point. 1 inch inside the right, 1 inch inside your left. That's the master click switch. Got it? All right. If you want to learn more, if this interests you, come back, visit me. I've sold 13,000 books this past 3 weeks. If I run out tonight, I'll be back tomorrow with some more, okay? So my apologies if I run out of books. It's proven very, very popular. So we're going to end with a little bit of music, and then we'll call it an evening. Sound good? All right. last song, and this is called "It Takes a Worried Man to Click His Amygdala Forward and Not Be Worried Anymore."
Yeah.
You want to clap?
It takes a word man to sing a word song. It takes a word man to sing a word song. It takes a word man to sing a word song. Click your amygdala. You won't be worried long. It takes a word man to sing a word song. It takes a word man to sing a word song. It takes a word man to sing a word song. Click your amygdala. You won't be worried long. Yeah.
Eric Vincent. Yes, and Kate Foster. Thank you very much, and I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Where the lights get.
See what'll happen if you click your amygdala forward? You can all do this next year. All right, folks, you can visit the exhibits, you can go get drunk, whatever you want to do, but be back by 8 o'clock in the morning when these exhibitors are going to give away some free prizes. You want to get in on things, be back tomorrow morning. Thank you very much, Neil and Eric. Don't you appreciate all the equipment they brought with them? This is all theirs, the whole business, a lot of stuff that they brought along.
Thank you for everything.
Okay. You can see the exhibits as long as you like tonight or as long as they want to stay open.